Welcome back. All right, so someone took a shot at the Miami Dolphins starting QB Ryan Tannehill, and it wasn't a member of the media, nor was it a player or a coach. It was the wife of a player. The wife of Dolphins cornerback Brent Grimes had this to say about Tannehill on Twitter. "I knew this QB stunk the minute we signed to this team, but I tried to keep quiet so I didn't discourage Bay from believing in his team." She went on to say, "I should have known we were going to lose when I heard we didn't complete a single pass in 2-minute drills this week against the practice squad defense." Were Miko Grimes' comments out of bounds?
Well, I think we showed the actually probably lightest stuff of some of the stuff she said.
Yeah, we try to keep it PG here.
Yeah, I always, it's a thin line for me when you come with family members, especially wives, because a lot of times I think they say what the athlete can't say. They're saying what the family members can't say. What the athletes or what some of the guys on the Miami Dolphins defense might be thinking, but can't really say. It sounds like she's saying that for them. I've had ex-girlfriends, when they see people on Twitter come at me and they want to be like, they want to take a shot at those people and answer back to everybody. And I kind of understand where she's coming from. She did take shots at some of the writers that cover the Miami Dolphins as well. It's tough because I covered the New Jersey Nets when they were making all those runs to the finals, and I had to deal with Jason Kidd and Jemana Kidd. And Jemana Kidd found herself in the spotlight quite a bit. Remember during that playoff series they played against the Boston Celtics? Yeah. I also covered the New York Knicks when they made a finals run, and they had Glenn Rice, and Glenn Rice's wife was the Cuban Mrs. Crisis, if you remember correctly. Oh, yeah. She was upset that Glenn Rice wasn't getting a lot of PT. So I've dealt with some of these at times. She did kind of maybe cross the line with her language and how harsh she made things sound. And now you've got some issues in the locker room probably between Ryan Tannehill and the defense. That team, though, I think is probably fragile because you've seen how they've been already this season, that something like this could tear them apart. But I think they have already been torn apart. I think that team has had issues most of the season.
Well, they've had some issues going into the season. You remember, the season before and the season before. You thought, when they got Ndamukong Suh coming in, that would change the culture and they'd be stronger. But, it doesn't seem to happen when you have an outside source. And I've always been the believer that if an outside source can, damage the infrastructure of the team, then you are mentally fragile. The one thing that's interesting here, and to your point, back in the day when you had Glenn Rice's wife and Jason Kidd's wife, there wasn't social media wasn't as prevalent and popular as it is now. So they didn't have the same outlet to just get out there. But what's interesting here is that she used the words, and I wrote this down specifically. When I heard. Yeah. And that goes to your point in the morning meeting. Who did you hear this from? So are you speaking on behalf of your husband? Are you speaking on behalf of some other teammates that may have been around the house talking or whatever,
Or their wives saying that to her.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of where you have to draw the line, I think, in you know what? Slow this down, because when I heard almost breaks the code of silence that you're supposed to have with your spouse on public stuff. Hey, babe, I'm coming home, had a bad day, this team, this player, this, that, and the other. There's a code of silence that's not supposed to be broken. Now, if she just said, I know, I heard, that's different. But when you say, when I heard from someone else implicating either your husband, that's not in the best interest of what's supposed to, you're supposed to look out. And I don't know.
Look, here it is, specifically, Scoop. I should have known we were going to lose when I heard we didn't complete a single pass in 2-minute drills this week against the practice squad defense.
Right.
Yeah,
do you think she was at practice? Do you think she was at practice watching this?
That's the point.
I got a pretty good guess where this came from.
Exactly.
I got a pretty good guess whose opinion this is about Ryan Tannehill. And the name isn't Miko. The last name might be Grimes, but it isn't Miko.
Right.
So you talk about a team being fragile in the locker room, the Miami Dolphins, or that you would be fragile if you would allow something like this to poison your locker room. No, sir. No, sir. I think this right here is the essence of poisoning a locker room. With all due respect to you two, and whatever respect Miko Grimes deserves, this isn't a thin line. This isn't maybe. This is way, way over the line. I can't read. We cannot read the tweets that she puts out. But I can read this. I believe she called Ryan Tannehill a bum. She said he was stunk. She said that how many people does Ryan Tannehill have to get fired before you realize he's the problem? Set aside whether she's right or wrong, by the way.
Right.
That's beside the point.
That's all subjective.
What do you think happens in work when Ryan Tannehill comes and looks across the locker room at Brent Grimes? Especially when he realizes these sound like inside opinions about practice.
But that's what I think she aired the Miami Dolphins' dirty laundry. And I think that's the thing. I think
that's way over the line.
I think she is giving us a glimpse into what is already happening in the locker room. I mean, if this was just her opinion and her opinion only, and maybe even her husband's opinion, and that was it,
right? That's
then,
what I'm
then yeah.
Exactly.
But I kind of have a feeling it's more than that. This team has had their issues all season long, and I think she's just kind of putting it out there.
If Brent Grimes went on television in a post-game scrum, a post-game news conference, and threw Tannehill under the bus and talked about the way he performed in practice, would we sit here the next morning and say Brent Grimes handled his business the right way? Well, if he aired it publicly, would we sit here and defend Brent Grimes? I highly doubt it. It happens on occasions, and we usually say that business is handled behind the scenes. This is no different. In fact, this is worse because this is a person who is not a member of the team. This has the potential to let Ryan Tannehill or other members know you're talking behind my back. You're not man enough to even bring it to me.
But here's the problem, though. We also live in an age of social media. So we also have seen Marshawn Lynch's mom come out and say that she wants the Seahawks offensive coordinator to be fired. We've seen girlfriends come out and say, put Bay in. So, you can't really control all of your spouses.
There's a difference. Cole Beasley's wife has been all over Twitter this year defending the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver every time he makes a fumble or a missed reception in a game. But I do think there's also a difference between defending your spouse and throwing other people under the bus, of throwing blame on other people. Gisele Bundchen did it. It's not just Miko Grimes.
I think sometimes wives and girlfriends can't differentiate that. Sometimes wives and girlfriends can't differentiate between defending Bay and basically throwing other people under the bus. It's the same thing.
That's a them problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying Brent Grimes should tell his wife, hey, calm down, and listen, I don't want Mrs. Grimes to come at me on Twitter and come with her cannons blazing like she has against the Dolphins beat writers. But look, I mean, if you're talking that this is Brent Grimes' problem and an issue, maybe he needs to say something to her, perhaps, okay? But, I think that horse is way out of the barn. Yeah, I mean, there's a history of that.
Years.
But Prim is right. I mean, in today's day, in Twitter and Facebook and everything like that, this is probably more common than not common. Could you imagine, we talked about this, what if Mrs. Doug Christie had Twitter at her hands back in the day? Could you imagine that?
She has a TV show already now without Twitter. If she had Twitter back in the day, she'd probably have her own network. Because that's a whole nother story. But to my question, that's a great point. But Will, would we be talking about this? Would this have the same effect if Gomes had said this and not his wife?
Grimes.
Grimes said this and not his wife. Would we be talking about the breakup or the dysfunction in the locker room had he said it?
Yes, we would.
You think so?
I think we would,
Definitely.
and I think this is worse than that. I think we would be having that conversation talking about how horribly Brent Grimes handled that situation should he have gone in front of cameras and said this. And I think having your wife saying it on Twitter is actually worse.
I think it's a little bit different because I think kind of what Owen's saying, I think because she's saying it, it's much bigger than just an individual problem.
Yeah.
I think if he had said it, it may have been like, you know what? He has a personal issue. This is just him. I think with her saying it, she's exposing stuff that is bigger than just his personal feelings. And that's why this is a story. And if he said it, it wouldn't be.
Yes, so but that's what your defense to me right now is, yeah, but Will, it might be true. And yeah, but more people on the team might feel this way than her. And I will say to you, that can all be fine. I don't care if Ndamukong Suh or Lamar Miller feels the same way as Miko Grimes. That's not the point. The point is Miko Grimes doesn't need to be on Twitter using, by the way, you referenced it, the language is part of this as well. Yeah. I mean, this is completely
I don't condone at all.
Disrespectful, irresponsible language to be using in coordination with throwing your husband's teammate under the bus. This is it's just so far beyond the pale, so far over the line. I mean, I still like it.
Let's see if Miko's tweeted me yet.
Has your significant other gone on Twitter or social media to defend you at all?
No, in fact, she tells it to the detriment of my career. She tells me not. This is my wife, by the way. Tells me me not to go on Twitter. That you shouldn't listen to people anyway.
Just completely silence.
Yeah, and she's right, by the way.
If they're affected by this, though, if the team really goes in a spiral because of this, what are we saying about the Miami Dolphins?
I mean, I think the team has already.
Well, they only have 1 week left to go into a spiral.
Yeah. I mean, they've already spiraled under control. They already have an interim head coach under the helm there. So there's a lot of questions. And it's been that way for a number of years. All right, so let's go ahead and move on.